My name's Ian Brown. I'm the Banff Centre Globe and Mail Canada correspondent, whatever that means. And it's my great pleasure this afternoon to talk to somebody I've admired for many years, and I'm not the only one. Deepa Mehta was born in 1950 in Amritsar in Punjab. She attended the University of Delhi, where she earned a degree in philosophy. She has made 8 feature films and is best known, some would say, for her Elements trilogy, Fire, which she made in 1996, Earth, which is 1998, and Water. The latter was a film about Indian widows that was nominated for Best Foreign Language Film in the 2005 Academy Awards. It has been distributed in 52 countries. The fundamentalist BJP government of India tried to shut down the production of Fire, which is a film about 2 lesbians, on the grounds that there were no lesbians in India. Forcing Deepa Mehta to finish the film 4 years later in Sri Lanka. It was later chosen as India's entry for Best Foreign Language Film in the Academy Awards, at which point the government re-embraced it. Ms. Mehta claims throughout these travails to have no interest in creating controversy. Nevertheless,
that sounds stupid, doesn't it?
Nevertheless, her adaptation of Salman Rushdie's Midnight's Children caused the Iranian government to try to shut that production down as well, again unsuccessfully. It was released last year. She has also worked in television on George Lucas's Indiana Jones series and on many other productions. She is in Banff. She claims to finish a screenplay. Ladies and gentlemen, would you give a warm welcome to Deepa Mehta?
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you, Ian.
Yeah, you're quite welcome. What are you doing here in Banff?
Seeing wonderful films at the Lux Theatre. I told you this morning, I've seen Wolverine, I saw Two Guns, and I saw Elysium.
Oh.
So
Did you like any of them?
I loved them all. No, I'm kidding. I really quite liked Two Guns. I thought Denzel Washington was very funny.
Are these films you would normally see? Would you go out of your...
I would probably on what's it called when you see them on television, Rogers on Demand or something. So it was wonderful to actually go to a movie theater, have popcorn, and be one of 10 people seeing Hugh Jackman take the talons out, and it was fun.
Do you think it's different to see it in a room with a few other people on a big screen than it is to see it on Netflix or?
Absolutely. I mean, you have to, you get the film gets your attention. Lights go down. You can't just say, okay, I'm going out and answering a phone call or anything. It has you, and it's a wonderful feeling. That's how I like my films to be seen.
And do you keep a journal of everything you see? I presume you try and see most movies that make any sort of note in the world.
I try to, but I mean, there's so many that are really good and so many that are really bad. You don't know, what you end up by seeing. No, I don't keep a journal.
So, apart from seeing films at the Lux, which is lovely, have you been doing anything in your writer's studio in the Leighton Artists Colony?
The first time I went there, I thought it was, and I still do, it was really beautiful. When I sort of started walking, I'm sure all of you are familiar with it, and through this little tiny lane or whatever, and there are lots of mosquitoes, and and you sit there and you put the light on, and I write my screenplays on a Hillary notebook with a pen, so fresh page, and I haven't written a word. But I really feel I've formulated the screenplay, which is far more important and far more difficult for somebody like me. So I needed the environment, or I needed an environment like Banff to be able to do so. Because just to be sitting there and thinking about what the first scene should be of your film, how will it end? Can you think of another scene which will perhaps tell you something about a character without saying it? I mean, because the whole exercise, I think, in writing a screenplay is to keep the dialogue to a minimal and then add it on the second or third draft if you feel like it. So it's always about the images. And sitting here, that's what happened. I mean, I didn't write anything really, but I feel I have the whole film in my head now, which makes me feel not so guilty about all the movies I saw at the Lux.
Other artists have said to me that they don't do any work here, but they do think but they can
Oh,
only work when they go back to the hideous hovel that they live in the
probably
city with them.
true. Probably true. I'm so glad. I was starting to feel guilty at some point. I said, my God, why aren't I writing something? And so it's nice to know. I did think a lot. Yeah.
Oh. Do you worry as you're working, as you're writing, or as you're not writing, as the case may be, as you're planning? Uh, do you worry about whether the film will be a success or whether it will be a failure, especially given that you have a big reputation and you are a very, a much respected filmmaker, one who reaches for a big arc and tells a big story. I mean, does that ever become intimidating even for somebody as established as you?
I mean, I'm always scared shitless, always. I mean, I don't think I'm ever as good as, I mean, while you're saying it, I'm thinking to myself, why is he lying? It's like, what? Like, not talking about me. I'm serious. I mean, I, I'd love to be able to sit there and say, okay, what will the audience like? But, a long time ago, I think when I decided after university that I wanted to do film and not pursue my academics further. I mean, I wanted to, at one point, do my PhD in Hindu philosophy. And I told my dad, who is a film distributor in India, and I said, told my parents that this is what I want to do. I want to give up philosophy and I want to make films. And he's had a lot of experience with films. And he sort of sat me down. He said, that's fine, do whatever you want to, but know that there are two things in life you never know about. One is how a film's going to do, and the other is when you're going to die. So, I sort of, at that moment, I mean, there's some truths that really hit home. And I think that truth from my father actually has given me that bit of a distance of, it's not that I don't have expectations. Of course I do, but it's given me a reality check because it's true. One really doesn't know if a film's going to be successful or not. I mean, there's so many factors. You might make a film that's brilliant, the way Orson Welles did with Citizen Kane. I mean, it took him like 30 years after he was dead, practically, that the film became the classic it has. So you never know.
Uh, but the fact that it's a crapshoot, that you never know what the outcome will be, does that make it easier to then write the film you want to write as opposed to the film you think might succeed?
I think so. I think so. I
Helps you
mean,
not pander.
yeah, and also what it does is it sort of is liberating in a way because it's really hard. I mean, all of you know, I'm sure, to make films. It's not glamorous at all. It's tough. I mean, you have to be a real sucker for punishment in a way if you want to make movies, but you love it. That's why you do it, and so you might as well do something that you are committed to. I think instead of doing something. It was interesting, Ian. After I did Water, which was I think the biggest commercial success I've had. I got a lot of offers from Hollywood saying, here's a screenplay, do this, and this one's got this actor. And I was like, this is great. This is what I've been waiting for. But really realized, I think it very fast within the year, that, and I'd spoken to Atom Egoyan, who's a wonderful filmmaker, who'd gone through the same thing and said that, it's so seductive. Hollywood is so seductive. The stars, what they give you, the money, you aren't running around making applications to Telefilm Canada anymore. And it's like, wow, this is the real.
That alone sounds
I know, it's like,
fantastic.
wow, this is great. No begging bowl in hand. And but it really it's very dehumanizing in many ways because you sit in your hotel room and the hotel might be the Four Seasons Beverly Hills, but you just sit there and you wait for people to respond, and there's studio heads, and then there's so many lawyers involved, and the actors don't show up, and a year goes by, and you haven't done anything. So I mean, it didn't work for me. It might work for you guys, and so I realized that I might as well just do what I wanted to, and then go for it. And that's what I did. So I did a film called Heaven on Earth, which was disastrous. Nobody saw it, but I love it. And that's fine, that is fine.
Heaven and Earth is your favorite.
It is my favorite.
Yeah. And your first one.
No, it's the one I made 2 films ago. One
Oh,
film
oh,
ago.
sorry. Right.
And
Okay.
Earth is the other one.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So this film, I'm interested in this notion of how you decide what to write about. The screenplay that you are writing on your Hilroy pad by hand in the woods just behind here.
I'm trying to write.
When you're not planning. You haven't answered a question as I expected you to since I started this. What's it about? What are you working on?
It's a book. It's an adaptation of a book called Secret Daughter. I don't know if you've heard of it, and it's really it's a wonderful story, and it's a difficult screenplay to adapt because it has so many timelines, and I still can't figure out who's the lead character. The 3 points of view. You know, one is the adopted mother, one is the real mother, and one is the kid, and it's uh, it's interesting. I mean, that's why it's taken so long to try and get it together.
Hmm. But at the same time, you were telling me this morning you have a finished screenplay that you want to do, which is about drug dealers in Vancouver.
Yes, that's the one I really want to do
What? Why?
because I love the characters. I mean, and I like, it's not just. I think as a screenplay writer, sometimes I mean, it's the story is really important, but it's the characters who inhabit a story. I mean, I think was it Shakespeare said there are 7 stories in the world, and it's what the permutations and combinations of what happens within the stories that make it unique. And yes, this is sort of like um, an Indian Canadian version of Goodfellas or something. It's really it's so tough and it's
Set
great.
in Surrey, Abbotsford,
Yes,
all along.
absolutely. Yeah,
Oh,
Surrey and
really?
Abbotsford. Yeah,
With drivers taking pot across the
yeah,
border?
totally. Yeah, the grass
Really?
fiends and it's a different world, and in a world of Canadians of Indian descent that are so alien to me being the kind of people I know who grew up here, who've been here for 2 generations, Indians, and who've gone on to become artists or filmmakers or work in banks or doctors and lawyers. Who thought that there'd be this whole culture that just deals in drugs? It's fascinating.
So why are you writing this one now and not just pushing ahead with it? Is that one financed? Is it ready to go?
No, no. What
Oh,
happened was I finished writing it, and then and we were about to produce it. I mean, start looking for the money. And when uh, when Salman Rushdie and myself sort of said, "Let's do Midnight's Children," so it got slightly derailed. And when we finished Midnight's Children, I said, "Okay, let me pick up this one again and the gangster one." And suddenly I got this book to write, and this is another producer who's offered me this, and I thought, let's see, because I know that that's there, but I thought I'd write this and let's see what happens.
and you've written a script for another film about Matisse about the last 2 years?
No, I
No, that.
didn't write it. No,
Uh-huh.
that was a film that was offered to me.
And you're going to direct that.
Yes, I'm going to direct that. Yeah.
So this is the point. How the hell do you get through the day without
I
without
see Wolverine.
because I'd have a nervous breakdown. I mean, I guess my question is what. How does a director do whatever it is a director? I mean, you mentioned Midnight's Children. I was looking up some stuff about Midnight. It was 70 days of shooting. It covers 4 generations. And 5 time periods and 3 wars. Costumes, presumably, and architecture and transportation and cars and etc. to match. It has 19 principal actors. It has 127 speaking parts. It has 3,000 extras plus elephants, stingrays. I mean, any number of exotic animals. Plus, you're planning the Matisse film. Plus, you're overworking scenes about the drug film. Plus, you're trying to write this thing. I mean, how do you do that?
Well, I mean, it sounds as if when you're focused on a film, when you actually start pre-production, which is when you really focus on it. And I mean, when I was doing Midnight's Children, I wasn't thinking about anything else. I wasn't thinking about the Matisse film. I wasn't thinking of my gangster film. Secret Daughters didn't exist, but I mean, I knew somewhere in the back burner was, the gangster film sort of bubbling along, and Matisse was happening, but it was not my concern because I hadn't raised the money. The money was already there. It had already been cast. It was waiting for an actor to give her dates. So it wasn't a problem. But when you're doing a film, you can't think of anything else except that film. Not at all, you know. I didn't start thinking of what to do next even till about 2 months ago, because I was so exhausted, because it's not just finishing a film, it's the worst part of making films is to do the press for it. When you go from these junkets from one city to another, and you get so bored with what you've done, and you sound the same, and it's painful. And that's what takes them. I mean, making a film is much easier for me than going for a junket. I mean, I find that very difficult.
Do they make you tweet about the film as well?
Nobody makes me do anything. I don't think.
I'm getting that impression. And then, of course, there's your famous workshopping that you do.
Yeah.
Can you describe that process? Because it sounds
That's interesting.
It sounds fascinating.
When did you get the time to do all this research? I want to know.
Yeah.
Yes, this is something that I would really like to share with you guys, because you're all filmmakers, and I think it might be helpful if it sort of rings a bell or has resonance for you. Is that about 4 years ago, I was in India and talking to a friend of mine who's a wonderful theatre director, and she brought up the Natya Shastras. Literally, the Natya Shastras means sort of a treatise, if you will, or a book about performance. Now, this book was written in India about 5,000 years ago, and it encompasses everything about a performance, which is the writing of a play. It was about theatre, about a play, performance, rehearsals, production design, costumes, music, everything about art that you can think of. And she said that a very famous exercise had been evolved from the Natya Shastras, which literally took 9 of the human emotions according to the Natya Shastras, which is the 9 are, I think, humor, love, hatred, repulsion, wonderment, silence, bravery, cowardice, and there's one more.
Anger?
Anger, yes, of course. Anger. And what you do is you make a grid of 9 boxes, say about the size of the place that Ian and myself are sitting on. And if there's a line that your actor is having a difficult time expressing, or you want to make the performance more complex and less linear, what you do is you make your actor walk along the 9 boxes, and just whenever you feel like it, just say stop. And supposing the actor ends up in the box of anger, and his line or her line is, "I love you," how do you say that? So what you actually do is that you force your actors to explore the layers in a character, because nothing is linear. And that I found an exercise, and there are a series of them, and they're about trust, basically. How do you trust your co-actor? How do you trust the space you are in? Even if you're doing a monologue and there's nobody around you, there is space around you. How do you deal with it? How do you use how do you need to gesticulate? Do you need to speak? So it is about all the exercises are sort of made for the actor to actually understand not only their character, but even the space around them. And I find them just fabulous. So we have started using them for all my rehearsals. And
so you put the principal actors through
all of them.
For how long does that process take?
Well, I rehearse with them for about a week. Yeah, it's pretty intensive, but it's fabulous, because by the time you get to the set and I say action, nobody till now has said to me, "What's my motivation?" So it's great.
So you get a big star in one of your movies, and do they agree to do this?
Of course, they have to. I mean, it's a part of it. And the thing that perhaps many people don't realize about so-called big actors is that they love rehearsing. I haven't met one actor who hasn't loved rehearsing and exploring. I mean, once you become like a huge star, you don't get to explore what made you want to become a star in the first place. That's performance. So they love it. I've never come across any actor that hasn't really gotten into it and loved exploring their character.
And so again, you don't worry about telling these very accomplished people what to do? I mean, I would think that as a director, one's bossiness might one might question one's bossiness or one's certainty of judgment. I can see people shaking their heads. They're obviously natural-born directors. I mean, when
I think
Oliver
he's trying to call us bossy, don't you? Or
Well,
me. He's calling me bossy.
well,
Ian.
maybe that's the wrong word, but there is a certainty of judgment. Virginia Woolf used that phrase
Yeah.
to describe great writers, so the great writers, the people who knew what they were doing. That certainty of judgment, I would imagine, you just go ahead and
You know, I think that you can't say with complete certitude, okay, this is wrong or this is right. I mean, I'm not ever sure. All I know is this is how I feel at this very minute. So I feel certain about the fact that this is my reaction to this. But I also know somewhere that I might be wrong. I mean, and that's what, Joan Didion talked about, is that what we have to actually really come to terms with is the most difficult things, according to her, was it's about self-deception. I think actually as a director, I'm sort of like almost like a therapist, in a way, and that you have to know yourself a lot before you want to direct somebody else, because it's about your limitations as well, and also know with some kind of an understanding of yourself how much more do you think you have to learn, or how do you feel that you're terrific, or do you feel scared or apprehensive? I mean, I think that's all very important.
would it be too much to ask you to give me a concrete example of where you are taking your own limitations into account in something, in a way you have directed somebody recently?
Always. I mean, I can't even think, I don't think it's one thing, Ian. I mean, I think that, you have actors, as you know, and you have, you're rehearsing with them in a space. And I don't do line rehearsals. It's not about lines. It's about them knowing what their character is, what they're feeling at that moment. And actors are the first ones to always give their interpretation, because it is about everybody's interpretation. And then you say, who's right? Who's right is the person. I don't think that there's any, right or wrong. I think that the person who has to take the responsibility of making that final decision is the director. And one should know that it's not a right or wrong decision, it's your decision. And that's what makes your films yours, as opposed to the actor is not credited as the director.
I presume that an actor wants a director that he or she can rely on. That if the director says, "Do not do that, do this," you say, "Great, okay, Deepa said that. I trust Deepa. Boom, I'm going there." And you want to engender that trust somehow. Is that something you set out consciously to establish?
I think you try to. I mean, but it really does depend. It's sort of, it became much easier after the sort of success of my first feature film, Fire, because it did well, and it critically as well. That I think for actors, if a film does well critically, they have more of a tendency to want to work with you. It's as you're as good as your last film, really.
So you don't have to be James Cameron, but
Well, we won't go there.
you just said something. You know how you feel in the moment. You said something interesting. My wife interviewed you, and she asked you a question. There was an interesting answer, and I wanted to repose it, if you don't mind. That your great revelation of late was that you had discovered emotion. That being told that something wasn't cerebral enough as now causes you intense anger or dislike of the person who said it. I wondered what you meant by that. That you've allowed yourself to be emotional.
Well, we're talking about independent films here, and I was talking to Johanna, and I remember this. But, you know, and also we're talking about Western films. Western films in the West are generally cerebral, they're intellectual, and they are pretty much devoid of emotion as we know it from coming from the East. I mean, I was born in India, so there's a lot. So I spent a large part of my life in denying that sort of dramatic, anguish-driven as side of me, which is really, so I don't know if it's emotion. It's almost melodrama in a way, which is not very cool in the West, but which is a way of life in the East. So I think that that's what I discovered. It's that, and through the Rust box, that's the box from the Natya Shastra, it's all about emotion. All those 9 are very strong emotion, including the emotion of that comes from silence. So I discovered that, and I know I'm no longer apologetic about or very, very consciously dismissive about anything that might be emotional.
Tell me a bit about the filming Midnight's Children. You left the writing of the screenplay to Salman Rushdie. Why was that?
Well, it's because of the book, and it's also because of Salman. I mean, first of all, uh, he's a marvelous screenplay writer. He had done a couple of screenplays, and I'd read them, and I thought that it would be impossible or very difficult for anybody um, to to do things to the screenplay or to do things to the book, because obviously the screenplay is quite different from the book. There are many characters who don't exist. There are chapters that don't exist, and I mean, I wanted a writer to do it, and he said, I'm not going to go to Salman Rushdie and say, I'm cutting out 600 pages from your book. So there was that kind of a thing that was happening, and when I told him, Salman, why don't you write it? And he said, absolutely not. I'm not going to do it. And he threw quite a fit, but he finally did agree, and that was the reason. The way he could be disrespectful to his own work, nobody else could be.
Mm, mm,
And that was the reason.
mm. Did it go as you planned? I mean, were all you did have that little problem with the Iranian government.
And yeah, it wasn't very pleasant again. But, by this time, I've sort of gotten used to it. So it didn't, it should have shattered me, but I was sure at this point that it would all work out. But what it did was,
There was a fatwa, though. I mean, were you not concerned
no,
for?
there was no fatwa.
Oh, it was over
No,
by
no,
that
no.
point.
Oh,
Oh,
the
of course,
fatwa's
yeah.
over.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But, Salman wanted to come for the shoot for a week or so to, just to see, because it's his first book, and he loved the book, and he loved the screenplay, and he wanted to see it. And he couldn't come. So he never, ever saw the film till it was actually done, and he saw a rough cut. And the reason he couldn't come was that he was not allowed to come, which is a pity. Yeah.
Did he like the rough cut?
Yeah, thank God. Oh, that was very nerve-wracking, showing this film to him, The Rough Cut. Yeah.
You were friends, so you've been
Yeah,
friends
but
for a
so
while.
what? It's like friendship goes out of the window, when it needs to be.
When you in this Matisse film, what attracted you to that?
I think that the reason I mean,
It's
first of all,
we should explain what the story is.
it's a part of Henri Matisse's life when he was about 80, and it's around the screenplay is about around the time of when he designed the Vin chapel in south of France. And what I loved about the screenplay is his relationship with a nun, who was his muse earlier on, and he was actually totally in love with her, and she joined a nunnery, and they worked together to design the chapel. So it's an unlikely love story. He was 80 and she was 26. So and also the thought was challenging. How do you make this relationship, which is even he was really in love with her, not be sort of yucky, And I like that challenge. Yeah.
Who have you cast as the Mila Kunis is the
Yeah, Mila Kunis is playing.
she's the young woman who was
Yeah.
in that TV series. What was it called? That 70s show, right. It's a very pretty, very good actress, right?
She's a great. I mean, she was in Black Swan. I don't know if any of you
Yeah.
have seen it. I mean, she's fabulous. She's an amazing actor. Yeah.
And who's the lead actor?
Well,
Who's
I don't
playing
know.
Matisse?
I know what the lead actor is. Thank you.
Not that an interviewer can be bossy. I'm not saying that there's any.
Sorry, and I wasn't meaning to be rude. Well,
that's-
maybe I
that's-
was. I don't know.
That's what I'm here for, really.
No. It's. I've looked at a couple of people, and I must say, I mean, this sounds bizarre that the person I really would like, and he says he wants to do it, is Al Pacino. And the reason I thought of Al Pacino is because I saw him in a film, The Merchant of Venice. Has anybody seen the film? I mean, he was just brilliant. Just brilliant. And I think that he's the right age. He's got nothing to prove now, you know. So I spent about a couple of days with him, and so maybe.
Really? I heard you were looking at Bardem, Javier Bardem. Too.
The producers were, yeah.
Oh, yeah?
He'd be terrific too. I mean, he really would be.
Uh-huh. How old is Pacino? He's almost 80 now,
Yeah, I
isn't
think he's going to be 80 next month or something. So there's something about him. Oh wow! He's coming to Toronto, I think, in September to do something.
he? And he's also in Godfather, in the Godfather,
yeah.
and which is your favorite?
Absolutely. I mean, it's perfect cinema. Not number 3, 1 and 2.
Number one, though? Perfect
Number
cinema?
perfect, absolutely perfect.
Why so?
It's got all the elements that, you know, the thin red line comes, Terrence Malick's thin red line for me comes, or Badlands comes very close to perfection, where all aspects of filmmaking, because it's not just one aspect, it's the editing, it's the music, it's the performance, it's the art direction, it's the costumes, it's the sound design, it's the cinematography, and it's the vision of the director. They all come together and nothing feels false for a second. I mean, it's just stunning. Have you seen Badlands?
Yeah, a long time ago, though.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. I saw on the plane, I was in Boston on the weekend, and I flew back yesterday and watched, when I wasn't reading about you, I watched Last Tango in Paris,
Oh, wow.
which is a weird movie to watch on a plane.
I know. I'm surprised that that Air Canada actually
The
had
the
it.
young mother next to me was freaking out every time. What's her name? The woman who's the young woman.
Schneider.
Maria Schneider appeared on screen naked, especially full frontal. Seemed to really shock her. It was something.
And you said it held the test of time.
Oh,
totally.
it's always been one of my.
It is. So, again, Bertolucci, I think that the Last Tango is also a film that's really, really beautiful.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
I think one of the reasons I like it, and like some of the films you've been talking about, is that if you went to a focus group and you said, I'm going to make a movie about a middle-aged guy who walks into an apartment that is occupied, in a building occupied by his wife who's just committed suicide, and he meets a young 20-year-old girl, and they have this weird affair, and he does nothing she wants, and she, you know, they'd say, you can't make that movie.
Nobody will go and see it.
Nobody will go and see it.
Nobody will tweet about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell me, speaking of great films, is there something that you wait for, some reaction you wait to have when you're reading a project you think you might do, or that you're looking for new projects, that makes you think, that gives you that sense of, you know, Raymond Chandler called it the sound of music in the distant hills, that designates in your mind, denotes this is a great work. This is a work that for whatever unknown reason, when you first encounter it, so you're not sure, is going to last. Do you have a few telltale signs that you always look for?
When you look at a screenplay, is a lot of it is dialogue page to page, from one end to the other. And I think that sometimes you read, maybe because I love books, that sometimes you get screenplays that are so descriptive, actually talk about the design, talk about not the feeling of a person, but I paint an atmosphere about where the character is and paint it with such depth. And so that always intrigues me.
You mean in the stage directions?
Just in the stage, because I get to know how the screenplay writer writes. I feel that you can't be a good screenplay writer. I think it's difficult to be a good screenplay writer unless you read a lot and unless you can write. But it's sometimes I see movies that elicit that kind of a thing, that you say, oh my God, I wish I'd made that. I mean, that is perfect kind of a thing. Whether it's a Godfather or lately, whether it was, Rust and Bones, for example. I mean, just the use of the camera. It's like, this man really knows how to use the camera. And somehow words become an image. And you know that this is an intelligent person who's directing it. And there's great beauty, and there's a great... I think that whenever you do anything, you have to make yourself completely vulnerable. And that is so tough. It is so difficult. There's no... I mean, we were talking about certainty and certitude earlier. And I was saying, it's not... It isn't that, because you might be wrong. And I think that that's what it's about. And that's a real challenge to me as a director, is that I feel whenever I walk on set that I'm totally vulnerable.
And practically, that means you could change your mind, you could
Absolutely.
be wrong, you could...
Absolutely. And that's what I've learned with time, is that now if I've changed my mind, there's no embarrassment in saying. These are the few things that help in saying, time out, I have to think about this, and take the time, because it's film, once it's on film and you've gone on to your next set, the chances are you don't have the budget to go back to that set. So you might, and if it doesn't feel right, don't think that because it's written in the script or because your producer is hanging behind you that you have to move on. Don't ever compromise, and listen to yourself. You might be wrong, but hey, at least it's your mistake,
I'm going to tell that to my editor the next time I talk to him.
Yeah, I'm sure
yes, but it's my mistake, John. It's
Yeah.
my mistake.
Yeah, and I'm sure you'll get a hefty advance the next time too.
That might not work. I don't know. Can we talk just brief? We're going to stop in 2 minutes and open it to questions. I know you'll have lots, but can we talk just briefly about controversy? Because I know that you say that you do not seek controversy. You seek a story. You did not try and piss off the Iranian government or the Indian, the BJP. I mean, you were really not attempting to do that. But I have to say that you have a remarkable talent for attracting it.
Yeah, I think that what happens with controversy is that it's also, sadly, it's like the world, it reflects the world we're living in, which is about, news and selling things. I mean, that's what it is. What's a good story? A controversy is a good story. And it's about selling. It's about economics. Come on, And I think that what happened with Fire was, which went through the Indian censors without one cut, which, had the ministry give all its approval, till somebody thought, this is an interesting thing, and I can get votes if I say I'm against this because it's against Indian culture. I mean, what was happening in India at that point was the right-wing Hindu fundamentalist government was fighting the secular government. So they needed an easy target. I mean, I was a soft target. So I was a woman. I'd done something that was slightly weird, and let's use that. And so that perpetuated a myth. And sometimes, even when there's something that's totally innocuous, people say, okay, yeah, she did well for us by being, with Fire. So we got lots of votes or something, and let's use it for something else.
Mm-hmm. And then when it came around to be India's entry in the Academy Awards, they got behind it and were...
it was a different government, to be fair. I mean,
that's true.
It was a different government, and but that happens all the time. I mean,
So
People like success and they don't like failure, and that's the reality, you know.
yeah,
And
yeah.
it's not pleasant.
Thanks, thanks for the tip.
Yeah, it's an obvious one, right? Very
So,
subtle, Deepa. Yeah.
so does the controversy then get in the way? I mean, does it prevent you from? I think what I want to hear. I mean, do you have advice for these, fledgling and up and coming and talented people? How do they get the work done? How do they? I keep thinking of something Tom Stoppard said. He's a guy who writes a
Oh.
descriptive.
Fabulous.
Like
Really.
the stage directions is like a small novel in between
Totally.
the bits of
That's
dialogue.
that's what I love.
But he
Absolutely.
somebody said to him, you're such a good writer. Why don't you write more plays? And he said, Madam, I'm currently spending 1.5% of my time writing plays, and I'm working very hard to get it up to 2%. But people keep interrupting me. So how do you keep at the work? I mean, how do you keep your eye, not on the prize so much, but on the thing that makes it graceful, I guess, that makes you want to do it?
I don't know. I mean, I wish there was an answer. I mean, why do you write? Sometimes when you write, you can write reams of stuff, and then you have one sentence, and you look at it and you say, "Aha! Now I know why I write," because that one sentence is such revelation of what you want. It's purity, and that's what we're all looking for at some point. Whether it's the perfect performance or a perfect line delivery, or a perfect angle of that your cinematographer has taken, or the perfect sound, or perfect design. And sometimes it all comes together, and it's so rare. But if you've seen that once, then you're always motivated to find it again. I mean, I think that's as honest as I can get. Otherwise, it becomes too esoteric. Yeah.
Thank you very much. That
Oh,
was
you're
great,
welcome.
great talking to you.